I hadn't earned a penny all year. I lost two homes that I owned. My car was taken away, and I was technically homeless. In my 40s, had to move back in with my parents, sold all the furniture and everything I had, and bought a really old Honda street motorcycle.
Hey, contact center, customer experience friends, welcome to episode 1 of season 2. I'm super excited to bring this back to you after a long hiatus. I know it's been a couple of years, a lot going on, but obviously you can tell I've decided to move forward with this in a little bit different of a format. Those of you who have been following us since season 1, Jason and Artie were a part of the original crew. And yeah, it just became too hard to maintain 4 different schedules, the 3 of us and a guest. So I'm going to move this thing forward, have conversations like usual. Still the primary intent of this is to really, to inspire the next generation of customer experience and contact center professionals through sharing of stories of those people that came up through the industry. We really still want to change the narrative that contact center or customer service jobs really have no future. And we've all personally met entrepreneurs, executives, technology people in our space that started as agents on the phone or even junior level leaders. And I think we should still celebrate those stories. So there's never any sales pitches in contact center journeys. The content is free for the audience. To use however you want. You want to splice it up. All I ask is, obviously, subscribe to YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, and of course, anytime you use our content, make sure you're tagging us, but feel free, use it as you want. So today, my special guest is the one and only Darren Prine. So for those of you who don't know Darren, he's one of the founders of Cloud Tech Gurus. He's a longtime leading industry expert. And, he came from the contact center space, and he's here to share his story and talk a little bit about the industry. So, he's also my business partner and a friend. So I thought, who better to start this, for season 2 to kick this off than Darren. So Darren, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Of course, man. So without further ado, Darren, tell us how you got into this crazy industry. Give us your story. What was your journey?
Well, I'll tell you, it seems like everybody I know in this industry fell into it somehow. I haven't met one person that thought, you know what, I think I want to be a contact center executive or an agent even. They all had other plans, and then somehow they ended up getting a job as a contact center agent. And in 1997, I moved from California to Arizona. And I got a job as a call center agent with what was US West, the local telephone company. And so I was an agent there for, I think a couple of years. And boy, was it challenging back then with the software that you had to work with in the systems. It was a nightmare. It was so hard. And I remember the interactions were just so repetitive. And, you wanted to bang your head on the desk. But, the pay was pretty good. And so moving to Phoenix, good company, good benefits, good pay. And it was a great experience learning about the contact center industry. And then from there, I went to a company called Insight. Some people have heard of Insight. They sell computers, hardware, and software. And so I was on a team was actually number 1 on my team, and was in the President's Club at Insight, which was all outbound sales. We had to make 80 plus calls a day, and we all had some pretty big quotas we had to hit. But it was great. The call center, they have 4 what's called stadiums. So think of like kind of a football stadium where you have agents on one level, then the next level, then the next level, and then on the floor is the managers. And they're walking around listening to you or watching what you're doing and coaching you. And it was awesome. The training I got, the experience, the success, it was all great. But I previously had been in the real estate industry and went back into the real estate industry in I don't know 2003 or four. Initially selling timeshare for Weston, um, and that was the hardest sales job ever. It's the hardest job ever to walk someone through a whole tour and to essentially get them to think about the joy and the memories gained from family trips. And, you know, when you look back on things, what do you remember? Those great vacations, those great memories. Anyhow, it was wild, crazy, hard. I did it until I burned out. And then I went into another real estate job. And then, unfortunately, as everyone knows, in about 2007 and 8, the market turned.
Yeah.
And by 2008, I was in commercial real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And that entire year, every month, I had a property worth $10 million or more in escrow, and not one deal closed because the financing had dried up. And unless you had a hedge fund friend, you're not getting any financing for, you know, I in December 2008, I had the Hotel Majestic in San Francisco in escrow for 25 million. And if that sale had gone through, it would have saved me. But it, again, the financing fell through. So by the end of '08, I hadn't earned a penny all year. I lost 2 homes that I owned. My car was taken away, and I was technically homeless. In my 40s, had to move back in with my parents, sold all the furniture and everything I had, and bought a really old Honda street motorcycle, a 1980 Honda street bike. And I remember I used to tell people, at least I know how I'm going to die. and a friend of mine, he said, you know what? I don't know if this is something you'd be interested in, but we just ventured into the contact center industry, or back then call center industry.
Right.
And we have the exclusive rights to sell a hosted contact center platform. And until Microsoft did the commercials with the cloud, it was just called hosted, and then afterwards cloud. So I'm out there trying to pitch hosted contact center at a time where people, it sounded like a fantasy. It sounded too good to be true. You know, a funny story. I called Greyhound Bus Lines, and I got their director on the phone, and he's telling me we have 3 call centers. We handle 20 million calls a year. We're in Avaya shop. We have Avaya equipment and all 3 sites and teams of people managing that equipment. And we have no interest at all in moving to a hosted contact center solution.
Right.
6 months later, I come back from lunch and the phone rings, and it's that director. And he says, we've decided we're a transportation company. We're not a contact center hardware management firm, and we want to move completely to a hosted solution. Funny how things changed. But in the early stages, I remember thinking, wow, this is so great. Everybody should move from on-prem to the cloud. It makes so much sense. But it was early and people weren't really ready. And it was tough making sales. And I worked my way. I got as far as I could go with the initial platform I was selling, which was, I learned in time, lacking in so many areas. One of our friends in the industry, Tom Rocca, he was a prospect of mine. And I remember Tom telling me, Darren, I like you and I'd love to do business with you, but I would rather pay to go with Connect First than to use your platform for free. I'm like, all right, time to think about a change. So I reached out to Connect First, and they weren't looking to hire a salesperson. In fact, at that time, they didn't think that salespeople were worthwhile. Kind of crazy, right? but I sold myself.
Of
They flew
course.
me out to Atlanta where they were originally headquartered. I met with them all. I got the job, low salary, but a pretty good commission plan, and it was a good platform. I lost business to Five9 and Nice and some of the other brands, mostly because you're not going to lose your job if you put your company with Nice or Five9. But
Right.
for those that weren't hung up on that, uh, platform was better, and I did really really well. I was employee number 6, and through my sales, we ended up before I left up to 40 people, teams of engineers and all kinds of even hiring people who we probably didn't even need at the time. But the company was growing, booming. We hired a sales team that worked under me, and then eventually I saw the future moving to omni-channel. And Connect First at that time was pretty much just voice. They had an awesome dialer, but pretty much just voice. And that's not where I saw the future. And I want to be talking to people about something that could be super impactful for them and their clients, and offering only voice when the future's moving to digital and young people love digital. I knew I needed a better, newer, more impactful platform, and I found Bright Pattern, where I worked for almost 5 years, and that was amazing. Their whole team, their engineering team, are all ex Genesis. These guys all worked at Genesis until Genesis went public. Then, then a group of them broke off and started Bright Pattern. So you have some of the most brilliant engineers on the market. I think their engineers held like a couple hundred patents. It was wild. When I would fly to San Francisco to the office, I was one of only a handful of people that spoke English. Everybody was speaking in Russian. I just assumed they were saying nice things about me, but who knows? but uh, but it was great. And again, I was ahead of the curve because omni-channel just blew people's minds at that time. The idea of being able to, and I would even share with people, imagine customer calls support, and they're talking to support, and they say, hey, you know what? I'm about to get on a bus. It's going to be noisy. Can we move to chat? Typically at that time, they'd say, well, no, you can't. You have to go here and start a new chat. And then, of course, anything you talked to the agent about, that's not going to carry over to the chat agent. So you're starting all over again, telling your whole story about your problem all over again. Horrible. Not a great customer experience. But with omnichannel, you could move from voice to chat, then back to voice to video. So it allowed customers to communicate in the way that they prefer,
Right.
and then adding in WhatsApp and all of the other kind of similar solutions really gave customers freedom to communicate on whatever their favorite channel is, and it was awesome. Again, ahead of the curve, but did really well. A lot of very smart BPOs. One of the largest, best known ones out there was a client of mine. A lot of the client names on their website are still ex customers of mine. So it was a great experience. But I parted ways after that, and have just kept on moving through different companies. Usually, the last several as VP of sales, and then here comes May of 2020, and we're mid pandemic. You remember everyone being depressed and sitting at home, and people weren't buying anything except trying to find toilet paper and paper towels and stuff like that. Um, and I was working for a UK company that hired me to completely grow their business in the US. And I started late 2019. So here we are in May, and they decide, you know what? They're a very conservative company. We probably shouldn't invest money right now in growing our business in the US. This is a mistake because of the pandemic and timing. So they laid me and my sales team off. And so it was either Well, I could go back out and get another VP or SVP of sales at some CCaaS company or some other SaaS company. Or, I watch friends on LinkedIn and I realize I'm the same. You work for a company, and after 2 or 3 years, now I always work for companies with an owner's mentality. It's my company. I breathe, bleed everything for that company. I'm putting in extra hours and I'm doing everything I can to try to make the company successful. Even driving CEOs nuts with all of the things I'm telling them we need. Um, but so it comes to May and I'm laid off, and it's like, all right. What I keep seeing from my friends and everyone else is they work a company, and within 3 years, they get to a point where either they get a bad boss, maybe somebody that knows less than them, but wants to micromanage them and make their life crazy. The culture can become toxic. Any number of things happen. And then you'll watch all your friends on LinkedIn within every 3 years, for the most part, they're then moving on to another company, hoping this is going to be the one. I think what we all want is that company where we can go work there, stay with them for the rest of our career, hopefully have put aside enough in our 401k and other investments where we'll be able to retire. And I think, as you know, trying to retire now is super hard. I don't see how young people with the costs rising and everything changing. I mean, most people can't afford to buy a house now. I don't know how most people are going to retire, but anyhow, our hope is we'll find a company and maybe we'll be such a big contributor that when they eventually get acquired, we'll get a little piece of the action, maybe a silver parachute, maybe not a gold one, but a silver one, right?
Right.
Um, but anyhow, you do these and then it just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So at this point, I said, you know what? Do I want to do that again? Go find another company. I'll work with them. A lot of times their policies and procedures actually are like speed bumps to my success.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous things that happen. Or is it time to, there's that story. I forgot what country it was, but the story about the crew that goes to the island and they're going to try to take over this island. And the captain or whoever's in charge, he burns all the boats. So he says, we're either going to die or we're going to win. And they won. I did that same thing. I said, that's it. I took out all the loans, HELOC, credit lines, everything I could get. Fortunately, I had good credit and decided to jump into Cloud Tech Gurus full time. It had already been in existence for a few years. Previously, It was a hobby business, really. We came across people all the time, me and my partners, where they would say, hey, we're looking for a new dynamic scripting solution or WFM or whatever. Who do you recommend? And we would make recommendations because we were very familiar with all the vendors, and we could introduce them to the one that would be the best fit. And we didn't make any money on it, but it was just something we did. And eventually, a smarter partner than I said, we should monetize this. So we created Cloud Tech Gurus. And originally, the model was we had a consultant, and we would introduce our clients to this consultant. He would meet with them and document the requirements. And then we'd go out and screen the vendors that we thought were the best fit, bring it back to him. He would then do a comparative analysis for the client. The client picked who they wanted, and then we would end up getting a commission in the channel model. Basically, customers don't pay for somebody's time to consult, to document their requirements, to screen vendors, to do all those things, which is very laborious. In most contact centers, people are working 40 hours a week or more. They're super busy going out and researching vendors, doing multiple discovery meetings with vendor after vendor. I mean, it's just super time consuming. You end up with 5 or 6 salespeople hounding you every week, trying to close you. It's a nightmare. And we're offering a better model. We're going to introduce you to this consultant. He'll interact with the vendors. You won't have anyone reaching out to you to bother you. You don't have to do multiple discovery meetings anymore. And we're going to do a comparative analysis. So it's going to be relatively easy for you to decide who's best for your business and for your outcomes. So then in May, finally, 2020, mid-pandemic, the worst possible time, I think, to go full-time and go into a business, I jumped in full-time to Cloud Tech Gurus. And it was interesting because originally we were just technology matchmakers. We worked with a TSD, Technology Solutions Distributor, and they have lots of vendors, the one we initially worked with. But it occurred to me that the vendors that I'm looking at in their vendor list, these are the same vendors that have been around for 20 years. I mean, some of them, the platform hasn't even changed really that much. Maybe there's some new modules, but it's old tech. But that seems to be what everyone, if you go to most TSDs, those are the ones you see. And I thought about it because I remember when I worked at Insight, technology was racing. It was going up. And technology was ramping up and improving so fast. And I thought, there's no way that in the contact center space, there aren't more modern, impactful CCaaS platforms, workforce management platforms, AI, yada, yada, yada. And so I started interviewing some of the newer, more modern tech companies out there. And I found, yeah, absolutely. Not only has the infrastructure changed. For instance, the infrastructure, I forgot what I used to call it. I think it was a federated something or not. But you can actually have your system hosted in Google, Azure, and another one. And actually, and Netflix does this. And then there's overlaying software that it's almost like the puppet master. It coordinates with all three. So if Google goes down or Amazon goes down, you're still up. So, you can go from having, most companies want 5 nines of uptime, but you could do better than that if you have a better infrastructure. You know more about infrastructure than I do, but it changed so radically. Also, with the newer infrastructure that companies were using, costs seem to have gone down. Which that's pretty big. So if I'm able to go to companies with a more modern solution that has some automation built in, where everything is tied in with AI and workflow automation, which can improve efficiency by like 20%, and for 20, 30, sometimes $50 less per license. That's exciting. I like being able to do that. I want to help people find ways to improve their efficiency while reducing their costs. And it's more readily available to have those situations now than ever because there's amazing vendors in the market. So we moved from that to becoming a TSD ourselves. When we got to 30 vendors that we had signed as suppliers, we said, all right, we're a TSD now. We'll act like one, and everything changed. And of course, our business is a little different than other TSDs because our sub agents are all contact center consultants, which is great. So anyhow, they use our portfolio however they see fit to solve for their customer outcomes or for their business outcomes. Typically most of them have found we have the best portfolio in the world of contact center solutions. But what excites me about this is right now, there has never been more opportunity for companies to use AI to automate processes and tasks than ever before. And what this what's the biggest expense for a business? It's labor, right? So if you can find a way to reduce labor to get the job done, that's a huge savings. And I think right now analysts still say we have a 40 to 60% chance of a recession. Doesn't it make sense for every company right now to be looking at all the ways they can reduce costs? And some of the newer vendors on the market can do just that. There's some that are so amazing that keeps me up at night. I'm thinking about how can I how can I get this in front of people? I want to scream about it from the mountaintops, because I know if they really reviewed it objectively, they would see how impactful it could be for their business, and how it could potentially protect them from having to let people off, let people go if the economy turns for the worse. So
Right.
right now, that is what I'm most passionate about: helping companies try to find ways to improve their efficiency, to automate wherever possible, to reduce their costs, and be able to weather any economic storm that comes.
Yeah. You've got such a great story. Yeah, I mean, look, you started as an agent, as I did, as many of us did in this industry. Yeah, you're the perfect example of why contact center journeys, why I wanted to build this in the first place. Because you literally started at the bottom and you're now a co-founder and part owner in a business that is growing and succeeding in the industry. Yeah, and it's amazing arc. I love your story. Yeah, and that's why it made so much sense to get you on, not just because you're my partner, but come on, it's a great story. Um,
Yeah,
let's talk about let's jump into modern world, right? You kind of
yeah.
answered my first question, which is what keeps you up at night. But are there, other than getting this stuff out to people in the industry and the contact center practitioners and the IT folks dealing with their current contact center infrastructure, what else keeps you up at night when it comes to contact centers, CX?
You know, really, it's just the impact of AI. How is that going to change? Um, and how can we help companies be prepared for that change? So,
Yeah,
for example, a little over 3 years ago, I was working with a company that wanted to. They were using, I don't know if it was Einstein or it was either Zendesk or Salesforce's AI, and it could automate about 5%
right,
of interactions, and they wanted to get up to 10%, and we had several suppliers that could help them do that.
right,
Shortly thereafter, by the next year, so 2 years ago, I guess, um, we were well over 20%. We were seeing 20% to 30%, and then 30 to 50% of interactions that AI can resolve. And I don't mean just handle, resolve, and resolve
right,
well. With
right,
with high CSAT scores. So if and now we have companies where you and I know companies where, for instance, one has a credit union client where the AI is handling 96% of their interactions.
yep,
I never tell people you're gonna have 90% of your interactions that AI
no,
can handle. But uh, if it was 50%, wouldn't it make sense based on the cost of labor? But what we're regularly seeing now is 50 to 80%. And the number of companies that are in that 80% range is huge.
hmm
And so, we started 3 years ago, right? Talking about AI, and I was trying to help them get to 10%, then 20%. Now, 50 to 80%, with more of it in the 80% range. What's it going to be in 2 more years?
no,
I mean, it's going to be 90 to 100%. Humans are going to just be for anything that's really mission critical or super challenging or beyond the capabilities of what AI can be trained on. So they'll be specialists. Um, but where else can they work? I even think about, for young people, what career should they get into right now? I keep thinking that probably getting in and learning AI inside and out, getting certifications. And I think there'll always be a need for people that can help manage the AI within companies. I think that will grow to be a super high paying job. I think there is incredible opportunity there. If I was starting again as a younger person, that's what I'd be doing. But I wish I had a crystal ball and could see what's going to happen in 2 years. And then, ultimately, You know what? On my LinkedIn, I think I quote Jim Rohn, and it's basically something along the lines of, what you get in life is determined on how much you are of service to others.
Right.
And one of the principles in founding the business was we want to be of service. And a lot of times the things we do aren't things we get paid on. Introductions, advice. There's all kinds of helping people get jobs. There are all these things, and our goal is to be of service. And enough of the time, and when we're of service to companies, it ends up being something where we're able to make some revenue from it. But the whole business was designed around being of service to people in every way. And when I looked at how companies used to source solutions, they go out to the website or trade shows, pull up a bunch of companies, submit a form that they want a demo. Salesperson's assigned. They have to do a 1 hour discovery. And if there's 5 salespeople, that's 5 hours of discoveries. And
Right.
and then afterwards, there's all the other meetings, and then you have all these salespeople after their sales pipeline meetings hounding you. And I thought, isn't there a better way to be of service to people that are sourcing solutions? So coming back to AI, what I want to figure out, and I think you and I and our team of over 90 consultants, which we call gurus, I think our brainstorming is going to allow us to help determine what's the path and how can we help companies be prepared for next year.
Yeah.
Because the changes are so fast and so radical right now. I mean, I keep hearing about ChatGPT 5 and how it's going to be so much, so radically different and better than version 4 that I use, right? Well, how can we help position? And then, you talk a lot about AI readiness, and we have a service to help companies see if they're even ready for it based on their environment, their data,
Right.
all that other stuff. But, AI readiness, and what else can we do to help prepare them so they don't fall behind, so they can stay ahead, stay relevant, not become a dinosaur. And I don't have the answers for that, but that keeps me up all the time thinking about where's it going, and then how can we position ourselves to be of service with AI.
And that's why we built the AI readiness, right? I mean, we didn't put 6 months of time bringing together the right operational teams, the right technology teams, to just do something to make money, right? That's a tremendous amount of value, even if it's just the maturity assessment. And that's the thing, most contact centers are not going to go out and hire a top 5 consulting firm and pay $750,000 to $1 million for
Yeah.
a full 360 roadmap for their company. And in reality, we all know this internally. If you pay that money, you know what you're getting. You're getting a Gartner Magic Quadrant list that's been repurposed in somebody else's brand. So you just
Yeah.
paid a ton of money. So most contact centers can't even do that. So
Yeah.
having a way to step through the process and understand, where are we at, what's our maturity level, and then, if you have the capability and the need, do a full 360. Otherwise, there's plenty of point solutions you and I deal with every day,
Yeah.
for customers and gurus and partners, that can solve that. You don't necessarily need a heavy lift anymore.
Yeah.
Ingestion models, things have changed. But that doesn't mean that a company doesn't need to be ready. I mean,
Yeah.
people need to stop thinking about this as AI is conversational bots.
Mhm.
Most people don't even go there. Most people are like, AI is chatbots.
Yeah.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
what we used 5 years ago was chatbots.
Right.
Um, Conditional branching, pre-designed, workflows that never really worked in the first place.
Yeah.
That's what most people still think artificial intelligence is.
Because so
Although
many companies are still using it. I mean, just
exactly,
on my trip to Puerto Vallarta last week, I ended up in so many chats where it's basically a if then kind of workflow that
right,
doesn't solve anything, but just
yeah,
frustrates you and makes you angry, and it's a bad customer experience. And you
yeah, yeah,
also touched on, point solutions. But I think, as we all know, we're both ex salespeople or recovering salespeople. And, the dream is always any customer that you work with has already worked with a consultant who's done a gap analysis and has looked at people, processes, and everything else. Finally, when they have all of that worked out and fine tuned, then they need to look at what software they could leverage to reach their goals and to prioritize what they need. And that's always the dream. And, if we get a direct client that reaches out to us, we assign them a guru who will document the requirements. We'll screen all the vendors. We'll do all those things at no cost. But regardless, if it makes sense for companies to have their, essentially take a look at and analyze their landscape, right? Until you really know what you have, it's really hard to tell what you need and how to move to a new solution that isn't going to be more of what you didn't like about the one you had before, right? So that's why I love the AI readiness. I mean, I think in every area of technology, meeting with someone like us or others to have them access and analyze everything. I think that's a smart move. That keeps you from just wasting money on solutions that might not actually be a fit if you were looking at it from a higher level and saw the full picture, right?
Yeah, I mean, you and I both know. I mean, a bunch of these point solutions, I really don't blame the clients as much. Because a lot of these point solutions came to market right after November of 22, and they were promising the sun and the moon and the stars because it's AI powered by and a wrapper around ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then of course we got Llama and on and on and on. And they marketed everything. And these customers, I ran a center. You worked in a center and you ran teams. I mean, it is 24/7 putting out fires, trying to make sure that your team is running efficiently, you're managing appropriately, you've got coverage in all the right places. You don't have time to go out and analyze all this stuff, let alone do you have an internal resource that's capable of looking across people, processes, and technologies and putting it all together. Yeah. So, most companies, they're only the ones that do that are the ones that can really afford it. And then again, they end up with that, magic quadrant report. And no offense, I love y'all, and we've got a lot of relationships in the magic quadrant. We love you. We work with you. But quite frankly, there's a lot of cutting edge technology out there today that's available that is much further down. And much more modern and much better accuracies and faster, delays. And I mean, I could go on and on, but you can't blame the contact center people out there because I mean, they don't have time and they're hearing from the board, hey, we need an AI strategy, and of course, the contact center is the tip of the spear. I mean, we're used to NLU, NLP, text to speech, speech to text. We all know this language. It's been in our industry for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, Watson came to our market and said, we're ready for contact centers. How long? 10, 12 years ago? And you want to talk about the biggest disaster ever.
Yes.
So we're still overcoming all of these overpromise and undelivers. Space, but yet we still got this great early adopter segment in our space that just continues to push the envelope. So I mean, I think it's a valid reason to stay up at night. Is how do you help as many people as possible, and to be of service? That's the greatest value you can bring, anyways.
Absolutely.
I believe that's where real joy comes from, is when you can serve others and help others. Don't get me wrong, we still run a business, but
and it's a tough, when you are either assigned or you're part of a tiger team or whatever for procuring a solution, in most cases, they already had a job that was so busy they could barely get it done. And probably have to work extra hours. And for them to have to go out and do all the research and do all the discoveries and to document the requirements. I join consultant groups for webinars and things fairly regularly. And it's funny because, outside of our consultants who are in our trainings every week and are learning about all of our suppliers, when I get in groups with consultants, they're still talking about the same solutions from 5 years ago and 10 years ago. It's like they're not even aware that these new companies exist because they just locked into tunnel vision on I won't mention them again, but the usual suspects, right? So and there's a lot of fear. People have purchased solutions and then it did not deliver as promised. It kind of bothers me, and it's a challenge because, I'm interacting with companies all the time, and I have a great background on the technology that's available. And so when I get transferred to, for example, some other department and there's just dead air. There's no music. There's nothing. And you wait there for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Then, of course, you realize that there's a problem in their IVR. And that transfer to that department is basically like a dead line. I'm never going to talk to anyone. We have, I think, 2 solutions in our portfolio that can go through and find every area where your IVR is broken for voice chat, for everything else. And that companies haven't done that. Mind blowing. Don't you want to know? It's beyond customer experience. It's about trying to create advocates that are telling people about your company. And how are you going to do that when you don't even have your IVR working the right way and people are getting sent to lines where they get a busy signal or dead air? These are just examples, but there are so many things companies can do to radically improve their customer experience, which ultimately, if they're really aware of it and have any kind of passion for it, the changes to make to actually improve and have a great customer experience, it'll probably save them money. Most of these solutions, the ROI is off the charts. So they can both improve their interactions with customers, the customer experience, and reduce costs. It just makes no sense not to be doing it. But some companies just don't know. They don't have time to do the research. And if they're working with some of these older consultants that aren't keeping up, we invested over 3,000 hours evaluating vendors. And between us and our 90 plus gurus, we're evaluating new vendors all week long. So we're always in the know on who's the latest, greatest, the most modern solutions on the market, what's going to be the most impactful, understanding which verticals, which companies can gain the best benefits from it. But I would say the majority of consultants are still, they're back in time somewhere in what they know. And that's what they're sharing with customers. They're sharing old AI. They're sharing old CCAS. They're not showing the ones that can radically make changes. They're not showing the ones where it automatically takes the notes from the agent's conversation and pushes them into the CRM, or that has AI agent assist built in to ensure interactions are faster and better and resolved much better than they could be, with the agent on their own. There's just so many things that are lacking where they could have a great customer experience every time, where they can never have long hold times, where calls are crystal clear. Right now, we're using a solution where if I had dogs barking behind me or babies crying, you wouldn't hear it. You're using it too. If you had a gardener, right outside your office, I wouldn't hear anything, just your voice. It's a no-brainer. Every call center should be using it. But really, how do you get out there and share all these things with companies? That's the tricky part, and that's where my mind is always at. There are solutions that can be so impactful. But I don't want to be a salesperson or come off salesy. But how do I approach them? How can I introduce them to a new modern world of solutions that can, make their business, exponentially better than it is now?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge, in our space. I've always believed, and despite, 10, 15 years ago when all the journals started writing about CEOs talking about the customer experience, I truly believe even today, to most C-suite, the customer experience and in particular, the contact center is a cost center. Now customer experience, they can speak all the pretty ideas of our customers are first, and then you go and you take a look under the hood, and they're still running 30% of the Fortune 500 are still running premise-based telephony, which,
Yeah.
some people may out there may not know what that means, but you've got 8-bit mono, which means that your accuracy rates of all artificial intelligence on that, past recordings, current live, they're just not as good. The data is not normalized and structured. Although with modern AI, it's that world is changing a little bit. I mean, but the fact does not change that most of these companies have not invested in their experience, and it's our job and our, I mean, let's call it our practice. I've
Yeah.
always struggled with the idea that the contact center industry, it's not a vertical because we work across every vertical,
Yeah.
right? It's not an industry because again, I mean, we work across everything, right?
Mhm.
So when I think about customer experience in contact centers, it's a practice. And that
I like
leads to
that.
a doctor, a lawyer. You got to continually stay
Yeah.
up to date. And the contact center, our practice is constantly evolving.
Hmm.
And these companies don't have support from the C-suite.
Yeah.
So that's half the challenge is how do I get support? How do I get buy-in? And that's
Yeah.
understanding language versus our language, which ours is KPIs, handle time, talk time, ticket time, number volumes, all the KPIs
Resolution.
done historically. But that is not what the C-suite speaks. So there's a good gap, and it's not just us. There are great companies out there that can help organizations really, help bridge that and give the data and information in a way that can then allow the C-suite to make educated decisions
Yeah.
based on real information, and that's where the service really builds value, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that
So
fact that that kind of brings up an AI solution we're about to start using internally, where
yeah, yeah,
essentially it'll be in all of my meetings with me, and it'll be reading my emails and organizing everything. So if I'm helping a client, basically all meetings, emails, exchanges, it's going to have that and have analyzed, and I can interrogate it about where things stand, what happened when, what has to happen next. More importantly, though, if I'm a CEO like you, um, if everyone in the company is using this AI, you could basically inquire. Or the team met last week for the product team met last week. What was discussed? What
yep,
was the end game, end result? What are they trying to resolve between now and the next time they meet?
yeah.
Or and
What
have
we're
it give you a full report with all that, or then go to it. All right, our sales pipeline meeting was last Monday. Who were the top performers? Um, who's on track to hit their quota and who's not, and why?
yeah,
And all of this info. So literally, I liken it to the Enterprise, Star Trek, where Captain Kirk could say computer, and he could ask about anything, and he could
yeah,
ask it to do things, and it'll do it. And tell me about this person. Tell me about the department. How's our photon torpedoes? Whatever. And it's like that now for companies, and it's actually finally now affordable for companies of all sizes to use what we're about to start using ourselves, where I'll
yeah,
be able to have it's like an evolving knowledge base that with each email, with each phone call, it just keeps evolving. So I have the most up to date, modern, intelligent database that I can query and I can interrogate. I can create reports. Um, I can do a discovery meeting without typing any notes, just asking the right questions. It'll take that and create a professional looking business requirements document that I can then use to send to vendors to screen them against requirements. And it's just mind blowing the time it will save. Not only that, I mean, my job's going to be more fun. Your job's going to be more fun. We're going to be so much more efficient. Everything we do, we're going to be able to do better. The ROI is there. It's just, this is available. People don't know it is. And, 9 out of 10 people, if you told them about it, they probably wouldn't believe it. Now, if they actually saw it, and any CEO that would see this is instantly going to want it. But nevertheless, that's just an example of the kinds of super impactful technology that's out there. And meanwhile, you have companies like, there's BPOs I know of that are using Excel for workforce management. Well, if labor is your biggest cost, not using workforce management, you're just throwing money away, right? And QA automation, to still have teams that are just going to listen in on 10% of calls, and no, you want to have 100% of calls that are analyzed, right? And then you can know how to coach who and when and why and so on. It's just wild. What's out there, what's available, and what could be impactful right now.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing, and of course, we're eating our dog food. We're definitely super excited. We're already efficient. We look a hell of a lot bigger than who we are, really, and we'll just continue to do that because I think that's the new world of building businesses. It's no longer about, crap, I got to go out and get 100 million to add, 100 staff and, developer resources and all these things. It's now, how can we create more value per individual person in an organization? And if companies are thinking like that, including the contact center, you folks out there that are listening to this, you should be thinking along the same lines. How can I create more value, cover more ground with each individual person? Not you're not buying technology to buy technology. This should be a thoughtful, and really strategic approach to this, because this is digital transformation 2.0, right? I mean, it's the same idea. It's across your whole org. We just happen to be the ones that can, if we choose, can take the driver's seat in AI transformation, because again, the contact center really is the tip of the spear. So with that, I got another question for you. I want you to reach into that crystal ball you mentioned earlier.
All right.
And I want you to tell me how you see the next 5 years playing out in our practice in contact centers, customer experience in general, and people, tech, everything. What's your next 5 years look like?
So I think as AI continues to evolve, at some point, what is it? General AI, when it can actually think,
AGI,
have logic and reason. But they say 10 years off. I'm going to guess it's less than that. But I think there'll be so many jobs that AI is able to do that there'll be significant reduction in staff in organizations. But there's always an opportunity. Anything bad happens, there's a good opportunity for someone else. So, like for instance, when 2008, when I lost everything, I could have switched into a different industry, and I had a $10 million property in escrow every month that would have fixed me had it closed, and I was a dummy, and I stayed in it until I lost everything. But I saw the market had turned. I could have just gotten into something else, probably gotten a great salary, kept both my homes and my car, and could have gone on with a good life. Right now, I think anything related to helping to manage AI, build, use, manage, integrate, any of those things, I think those are the jobs everybody should be, what within the next 5 years can't AI do? That's what you want to be doing. That's what you want to be providing, because it's going to be able to do so much. Eventually customer service agents, it's just going to be real specialty kind of, calls and chats and things they're on. and with the improved knowledge base or knowledge management systems, with evolving AI like the one I discussed, things are just going to change like that. And I think where it'll impact companies the most is in the BPO space,
Yeah.
because the mindset up until now is always butts and seats. We need to sell butts and seats. And how is that going to work where every year there's going to be AI resolving a higher and higher percentage of interactions? We have suppliers that guarantee their AI for automating digital interactions, where basically it's AI where humans brought in when the AI is not like 95% sure of its answer. The human comes in just to say, "Oh, all right, yeah, approved," and then the AI continues on. But they guarantee a 20% cost savings on their total customer service.
Right.
Mind blowing, right? And so as that gets higher and higher, BPOs that don't want to become dinosaurs, and I'll say the bulk of them are probably going to become dinosaurs. They need to move as quickly as possible into becoming um, customer service or customer experience specialists, where they don't care about the butts in the seats, where the mindset has to completely change, where they meet with the customer, they look at the whole landscape, they look at the pain points and the problems, and what's most critical to be fixed. And a lot of times that's fixed with some kind of technology or AI or something else. Maybe there's an opportunity to consult to help them improve their processes or people in some manner. But they cannot remain being BPOs, butts and seats, and leading with that. You don't want to lead with it. And what they don't know is that right now they're at risk that not only other BPOs that are heavily using AI and that
Right.
even lead with it. Um, these companies are eventually going to call on your client, and when they see this, especially some of the ones where they actually will guarantee a 20% cost savings, or or ones where they charge based on resolution. How about
Yeah.
that? Only being billed on what's resolved. How are you going to compete with that? You can't. You're a commodity, and that's not where you want to be. You need to be a CX solutions provider.
Yeah.
And so I think it's critical right now for every BPO to recognize the future, what's coming, to prepare for it, work with us, work with someone else like us, but make sure that you modify your model. You have all of the different solutions that can be impactful for your clients. You don't try to push butts and seats. Sure, where it makes sense for butts and seats and humans, you got the agents.
Yeah.
Wonderful. But you're compensated on all the technologies too. And how sticky are you going to be when you're handling, they're using the AI that you're essentially managing for them, they're the QA automation that you're managing for them, the workforce management that you're automating for them or managing for them. Yeah, they're using you for all of these things. It's really hard to leave. I mean, unless you really F up, they're going to
Right.
stay with you forever.
Yeah.
And what's that worth? And in fact, if the goal is to create advocates, that's how you create advocates. That's how you get new clients.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, I wish I could shake every BPO CEO right now that is still pushing, leading with butts and seats, and tell them this isn't going to work. You're on a course for extinction. You need to rethink your model and become that customer success, customer experience provider for your clients.
Yeah, well, I think we do a pretty good job of shaking the ones we know.
Yeah.
We try. We try nonetheless. I'm with you, and I think what we're going to see, there's going to be a consolidation in the market. There already is. It's already started. BPOs are buying each other, bringing in tech stacks. Some are white labeling, some are building. It's build, buyer, partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
This consolidation is going to accelerate. It just has to. People
Mm-hmm.
that don't really want to to do the technology side of this, they're going to be forced to sell. They have no choice.
Hmm.
It's not an option anymore. I've been trying to tell BPO owners for a long time that this was coming. I know you have. Now it's here.
Yeah.
Now they're finally starting to move. So I do agree though that fundamentally the whole practice is going to change.
Yeah.
The human aspect, in my opinion, I think will land in that 70% range on average. And the
Hmm.
only reason I say that for now is because some companies will use it as a differentiator. Hey, we still have a lot of humans answering our calls.
Yeah.
But self-service automation, it's all handled in natural language. Great experience, awesome. But you're still
Hmm.
going to need the empathy for a little while,
Yeah.
at least until our parents' generation, until the boomers, pass on and move on and no longer need service. I think but still the voice continues to go up. The voice path in our industry year
Hmm.
over year continues to increase the number of calls.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know if that's because of crappy self-service that's driving that, or
Yeah.
if it's because people truly still want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I still think we'll land in that 70-30 mark for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, I mean, AGI changes everything. At that point in time,
Yeah.
who the hell knows? All bets are off. UBI is on the table, and
Yeah. Right
for
now,
those.
chat. The problem with chat right now is they're giving the agents, so there's what's called occupancy, right? So if I'm an agent, I might be able to handle 5 chats at once,
Yeah,
or 3 chats at once, or there's different ways they can set it up. What I'm seeing is that frequently agents are handling too many.
yeah,
So we have different expectations for each channel. For an email, we're fine if it's the next day or so before we get a response.
yeah,
On the phone, it's immediate. We also expect chat to be immediate. We want to ask our question. We don't want to wait for them to go handle a few other people's questions and then come back to us. That's
yeah,
not a good customer experience. We want it. So, that's a problem. And then more often than not, I'll call them workflows, their chat, where they try to automate it's the stuff we all hate.
yeah,
It's why some people don't believe in what modern AI can do, because they keep experiencing that. And they're like, I don't like that. I don't want to provide that to my clients. I think I'm going to hold off on AI for now. So
correct.
it's that bad chat is, I think, what's been driving more people to using voice lately. But
Yeah,
as you know, we're friends with Jeff Bean, author of Next Generation Customer Experience, where he
yeah,
goes heavily into Gen Z. Gen Z is now becoming the most important generation for any company to want as a customer. They're the group that's going to have the most money, is going to be spending the most. Those are who you want to cater to, and their customer experience and what they want is vastly different than all the previous generations. They
yeah,
are they do rely more on digital. They rely on recommendations. They're involved. They're looking at everything with Reddit and all these other sites, looking for recommendations. Trust is huge for them. So
yeah,
we're going to see a big change as people start to cater more to Gen Z, and as they stop using those really crappy chat platforms that just frustrate and make people angry. you know I but voice will always be there. Old timers like me, I like to talk to somebody,
yeah.
unless I can't understand them because of a thick accent, which we offer a solution for that too.
Funny
But
enough, got to
other
solve.
than that, I prefer voice. And I know other people want to do WhatsApp or whatever else, but nevertheless, that things are changing. By the way, we periodically do workshops with Jeff Bean on next generation customer experience. The next one is in Fort Lauderdale on October 16th. So
Yep.
anyone can reach out to us if they want to learn more and want to join us for that. But it's going to be awesome. In the information they will learn how to prepare to provide customer experience, a good customer experience to Gen Z. They're not going to learn it anywhere else. This is the workshop to learn. So
Yeah.
excited about that. Excited about all the changes in the industry, and really excited that I'm a consumer with a lot of companies, and I suffer through all kinds of horrible customer experiences all the time. It's rare instances where companies actually have done it right, where transferred from one agent to another and they already know where things left off and I don't start from scratch or other things. But I think that the newer technologies, the knowledge we can share, I think in a couple of years, customer experience across the board is going to be so much better than it's ever been before. And it'll actually be pleasant when you have to reach out to your service provider and to resolve some kind of issue. In fact, it'll be so good that probably you'll be able to do it through self-service in a few minutes on your own and effectively, not bad self-service. So I'm super excited for what the future is going to bring and what it's going to mean to customer experience for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think you recently caught, I had put out, it was 8 years ago. I actually was wrong. My idea of, combining AI, machine learning, and IoT to preemptively solve customers' problems. And that, I saw that, I mean, 8 years ago. We're finally there, man. I mean, we are finally there. It's just getting past from early adopter to the Main Street, and getting past this first initial portion of the curve, and start to get to the point where laggards are. I agree. I think service, from your mouth to God's ears, man, service will become a great thing and almost a forgotten thing.
Yeah.
If your product, I truly believe, if a company is really focused on the customer experience, they shouldn't even be thinking about it. It should be that easy. And that's, I really believe we're there today. It's just, we haven't seen anybody work past all of the gotchas that still exist in current infrastructure and people and resources. But
the tools are there right now, but most people don't know about them. Or think they're too good to be true because of bad experiences with bad technology, which is unfortunate. And because I keep jumping into industries where I'm ahead of the curve, it's a long process. When I first started selling CCAS in 2009, I thought, you know what? In a couple of years from now, I'm just going to be an order taker. People are just going to be calling me all day long to sign up for our CCAS platform. And all these years later, it still hasn't happened. None of my friends at Five9 or Genesis or NICE or any other company are telling me that they're able to just sit there in their office chair all day and just have one call after the next of people that are ready to sign up and become customers. It's how many, I believe you'll know the figure probably better than me, but isn't there still like the largest amount of on-prem, or the largest amount of enterprise clients are still on-prem and haven't made the move, most likely because they think it's going to be way too difficult, time-consuming, difficult, expensive. So they're, some of them, they're not even supported anymore. But isn't it true that the bulk of Fortune companies are still on-prem and haven't made the jump?
Yeah, so 30% of, so this was last year's numbers. I haven't seen anything coming into 2025, and we don't usually get those till, towards the end of the year. But at that point in time, 30% of the Fortune 500 were still using premise-based telephony. So the actual numbers expected to convert to a new CCAS is something like 60% over the next couple of years, because a lot of people made the decision to jump during COVID, and they locked in 3 years because that's what the suppliers did in order to get accelerated implementations. So a lot of those contracts are coming up, or maybe they extend for 1 year to do their search. So there's a lot of stuff moving right now in the industry. And I mean, and a lot of companies need help, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's still a ton of enterprise businesses that still have not fully converted their organization to cloud. And now that now with AI and with the security and requirements and doing PLLMs, again, we're back to the build or buy question, and most companies should be buying, quite frankly.
Right.
Although as this stuff, vibe coding and coding through prompts becomes easier and easier, I
Hmm.
think that we'll start to move downstream, and the
Yeah.
capabilities to build will become a lot more viable. But in the end, if you still need to manage people, that means you still need to have CCAS, WFM, conversational analytics. There's still a lot of tools, and nobody can build all of that today all in one and be best of breed.
Right.
No one.
Exactly.
All right.
In fact,
So
tell me if you agree with me on this. I am of the opinion, because previously you've been in the business longer than I have. You were one of my mentors in 2009 when I started. And back then, there was people that just had like this crazy allegiance with different companies. We're an Avaya shop. We're
oh
a
yeah.
Genesis shop. We're a Cisco shop. And it doesn't matter what you say to them. Their only interest, their loyalty is with those companies. And I believe at this point, that doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to have a loyalty to really any vendor because everything's evolving so fast now that the CCAS you're using right now might be great, but in 3 years, there might be something so radically different and better that can do more and improve efficiency more and make a big impact
Yeah.
and cost savings. That I think what companies should do instead of having loyalty to a vendor is to get to a point where they're so agile that when something better comes along, they get really good at being able to migrate.
First of all, I agree with you. The actual uh, uh, customer loyalty numbers just have gone down, period, across any industry. The thing that we've seen is we went from like a 10-year LTV calculation to now like 6 to 8, and I think it'll continue to shrink.
Mhm.
The one of the most frustrating things for me and my software friends that are CEOs or product teams or listen, we're in the contact center and customer experience space, and you guys can't figure out how to implement and support your product well. Give me a break. I mean, it's the one reason why I keep wanting to go back into software, man. It's like, why isn't anybody building a company that does that? Because if you do, people will stay. That does create brand loyalty. If you
Yeah,
truly do everything, you can, and no one's perfect. Code has
yeah,
bugs. Things happen. I don't care if you're vibe coding, writing it by hand, got a million
yeah,
developers. I mean, look at Microsoft. I mean, every one of their new implementations, or sorry, upgrades or updates are buggy.
yeah,
No perfect software in the world, never will be. Our compute is too powerful. We don't have to be perfect with code.
yeah.
So I mean, just somebody out there really commit to driving value in the service side and the implementation. But to your point, that's why we're trying to build a product to fix the problem of why it's so difficult to move from one system to another. But that's
Mm.
for another time. We can't talk about that yet.
Yeah.
Um, we will. But that is a problem, right? Why should it be so difficult? But
Mhm.
it's a good question to ask,
Yeah.
right?
Companies wait virtually until they're forced
Yeah,
to
until they have no
because
choice. Their
to
products.
them it's such a big undertaking of resources and a lot of we don't even know who wrote our IVR code or where it is and what it is and there's all these things and so I am excited that in the near future we'll have a solution to make it relatively easy for companies to move from on-prem to the cloud. That'll be exciting. We'll share that in a different podcast, but
Yes.
exciting times ahead
Yeah.
and I think obviously early adopters are already seeing the benefits,
Oh yeah.
big
Yeah.
time, and the others that are trailblazers to the laggards. They're all going to eventually be on the bandwagon, and the winner is all of us as customers that
Let's
interact with different businesses.
Yeah, let's hope so. In the end, the winner in all of this will be the customer experience. And finally, we're going to get that that perfect experience. I believe it's coming. Well,
Yeah.
brother, I always appreciate you. Having you on is awesome as our season one, our season two, episode one guest. I can't wait to get this stuff out there. For those of you that are watching, I really appreciate you. I hope Darren's story and all the other stories that you get to listen to are inspiring. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, again, LinkedIn. Follow Cloud Tech Gurus. Darren and I are always putting content out. So, and we'll see you out in the field.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Love you, man. Cheers,
Love you, man.
everyone.